Good evening. Hey, I'm Rich Davis, aka the Velvet Joker, and tonight on Behind the Panels, we're diving into the ink lines of Gotham itself. From Batgirl to Gotham Underground, Jack Purcell has shaped the shadows of DC Comics and even taken his craft cosmic with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now he's stepping back into the creator's chair with his new indie project, Sight. DC veteran, master inker, storyteller reborn. Let's welcome Jack Purcell. Chair with his new indie.
There we go. Good evening.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for coming by. It was great seeing you at
I
Terrific.
can't hear Rich.
Oh no, you can't hear Rich?
It was great hearing you.
Hold on. I think I might have you. I can't hear Rich.
Hello.
I hear everybody.
I was
just for the record.
Okay. Sorry. Let me.
No worries. These things happen. Technical difficulties on occasion.
Jack, are you on your phone?
I am not. I am on
Okay, you're on a computer.
laptop.
That's good. That's a good sign.
I don't know why I can only hear you, Cliff.
Okay.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Rich,
Testing.
I hear you. You're there. So this is a more unique situation. All right, Jack, just go out and come back in again. Just refresh on the top.
Okay.
And twice now in the same week, I'm doing a live, and we start off with, "Can you hear me now?"
Technical difficulties.
That's live entertainment for you folks. That's live entertainment. Hello.
All right. I'm back.
He's back.
All right. I got both of you. Awesome.
All right.
I knew
Genius.
it. I knew it.
Beautiful.
Genius, assertive and genius.
You know what? I feel like after that I earned first question. How about that?
Go for it.
All right, Jack, you're back in the year 2000. What was happening in your life when you realized that comics could actually become part of your career?
Oh God, I was probably using a lot of profanity in the indies, trying really hard to break in. I think I was working on a 3-issue miniseries called Water Dogs at that point. I was also working on a book called Vesper, so I was pretty busy. Those were the 2 books around that time, and I was constantly submitting work to DC mostly and Marvel. Sorry, as an artist, the time becomes an abstract. But I had at one point around that time, I believe in '98, I had moved to San Francisco thinking I was going to somehow get work with Image or McFarlane or some stuff like that. And I did like indie work, but nothing really shook out. And then I came back to Western Mass in Northampton. And it was in New York all the time, just sending samples, making trips down. And, I eventually broke with DC. But I was doing a lot of work in the indies. So my hope at that point was that I was going to do comics full time, which was a short-lived ambition, and realized that it probably made sense to have, as my pro wrestling friends would say, a shoot job and then work on comics as well. So that's eventually what I did. So I got my teaching certification and was teaching and working in comics.
Nice.
Excellent.
Now, were you, when you say teaching, general studies, were you teaching art?
Well, I'll tell you, you do not want me teaching math or many other general studies that I was busy drawing during in high school. But teaching art, I've taught everything from K through college, but I was teaching mostly high school, some middle school. So grades 8 through 12 for the most part, but really focusing on high school. I taught at RISD in the continuing ed for a couple of years. But high school was really great. And I like college, and I do some, different events in different colleges and have gotten to speak at them. And so sometimes people will invite me for portfolio reviews, that type of thing. So I've been pretty fortunate to have a nice steady gig in education.
Okay. And now, before breaking into DC, you worked with Brainstorm, Roaring Studios, and Metal Mammoth. What did those early indie years teach you about the craft of comics?
Oh wow, about the craft of comics. I learned a lot of the hard lessons in the indies. Like I made a lot of mistakes. I learned about contracts. I learned not to take people's word for things. Um, but in terms of the craft, I really learned about consistency and reliability, which I think are two of the things that a lot of artists struggle with. You know, there's a lot of really good artists out there, but to be a good artist and to be a reliable artist are challenging. So, the one story that stands out in the indies for me was I was inking a double page spread cover. It was for a comic book called The Rift, and I was no problem with deadlines. Like I'm reliable and I know what I can do. So I had started work early on this, got to work, double page spread, and I wasn't being consistent about where I placed the ink. And I was only inking this. So the pencils were done. I was inking on the actual boards, and foolishly, I knocked the ink over. Like every inker's nightmare, destroy the cover. Totally unsavable. And I think generally a lot of what I teach is that everything's fixable, but everything isn't fixable. Most things are. This was just a disaster. And I'm sure every inker has this story on some level. But luckily, I had been bright enough to make copies of the pencil work. So I ran out to a copy shop, got it reprinted on some board, started over, and had an all-nighter, got it done on time. But it was a bummer to destroy the original pencils, and it was all on me. It was just a tough lesson to learn. But after that, I really learned about being more consistent and making sure something like that didn't happen. And it never has, thankfully. But yeah, just consistency, I think, was really it. And I really learned the value of editors even before I broke with DC. Because in the indies, a lot of independent artists, I think, really love the idea of not having an editor to have to collaborate with, work with, answer to. But I was busy sending samples to DC and Marvel, and I quickly learned that the editors had so much to offer. Like once you get to know some of these guys and you really learn about the depth of knowledge and experience they have, they're some of the most invaluable collaborators that I've ever had in comics, and I've had some great ones. Um, but I know that like when I was just on the cusp of breaking with DC, there was an editor named L.A. Williams who invited me in to show me some work. We had at that point, there wasn't so much internet and email. I'm dating myself, but I was sending in the mail, and he invited me in for lunch, went out, had lunch, came back to the studios. He was super cool, liked my work, but I think he was editing Impulse, which is one of the Flash books at the time, and said that he liked my work, but the truth was he probably had 20 guys ahead of me in line. So I probably wasn't going to be getting work anytime soon, but stay in touch. And as we were kind of wrapping up, a guy walked in the office, and I said something that made him laugh. I don't remember, some kind of a joke. And I didn't know who he was at the time, but then he came and introduced himself, and it was Bob Schreck, who is like one of, again, those collaborators I talked about, like just a legendary editor who is got a wealth of information. And luckily, I made him laugh, and he invited me up to his office and looked at my work, gave me a lot of constructive criticism. And I really focused on that because it was never mean. It was always constructive, but he would just be like, "Oh my God, this hair, like, you know, here's how you could do it." And he was showing me pages of Neil Adams, like original boards. And I was like, "Oh my God, wow." Like I hadn't really ever had the chance to hold a Neil Adams original. And so he really helped me a lot, and eventually ended up giving me my first job at DC Comics.
That's fantastic. So, well, I was going to ask you, do you remember the feeling? You gave us a lot of the vibe.
Yeah, man, I was busting ass all the time. I mean, I was in New York relentlessly. I think I just have a quality of being too stupid to take no for an answer. Like nobody was telling me no. I knew I was going to do it. I was just going to outwork people who were better than me. And it just happened to work out. And I remember it was in December. I think it was 2003, and I got to see Bob, and he really liked what I showed him, and he's like, you know what, like you've really grown and responded to what I've said to you, and I think it's time. And he handed me a full issue of pencils of Green Arrow, and he's like, here you go, and I was off. And that was crazy. I'll never forget that. I was like clutching those pages on the train all the way home, being like,
so
okay, here it is.
Was this a Marvel Method situation where you had all the art and now you got to fill in that story and do it fast?
Well, I mean, all I was doing was inking that. So Eric Battle was the penciler, and the pencils were tight. There wasn't a ton of stuff that I think I could have done too wrong. So he was, but I think he was a guy who I could add a little bit of flair to balance some of his work, because I think he's very good. But I think we were a good pairing at the time because I respected his work, but I was able to see like what could I bring to his work that might enhance it a little bit. Let's put it that way.
I'm going to go through all my Green Arrow comics before I go to bed from 2000 forward.
Yeah. No, it was, I think it was, I did a 3-issue run. I think it was 2004. It was issues 49, 51, and 53. It just ended up being every other issue.
That's kind of neat. I did want to ask you about, I think you had a bigger run on Gotham Underground, right? So I was just saying, at some point, you were floating around the mixes of all things Gotham, and I thought that was really interesting when looking at your resume, or your printed resume. Basically, what my comic shop told me you worked on, and shout out to mycomicshop.com. But basically, anyhow, I was really interested. There's some beautiful stuff that I saw from Gotham Underground. But what was it like just being? I don't even know if you are a Batman fan or not, but like just being immersed in so much Batman-ness.
Yeah, I mean, I trying not to be annoying about it, but really the first thing I would say to every editor who I met was like, I know this isn't an unusual situation, but there's 2 reasons I got into comics. I'll tell you, the first one is to work on Batman. And I would just tell every editor, even if there's like background inks, like if it was 1 page, whatever it is, I really want to work on Batman. Like that's what I'm here to do. And I would love to work on anything you think that I would fit on. But just so you understand who I am, like Batman's my guy. Like my first favorite superhero was Batman. As a little kid, I remember sitting in one of these gigantic, or laying in one of these gigantic Batman coloring books and just thinking like, this is the coolest superhero. And I always loved the Trinity. My father had exposed me to comics when I was really young. And so I knew of a lot of them, but Batman was always my favorite. So that was the number 1 goal, was to work on Batman. And Gotham Underground is probably my all-time favorite project. It was originally supposed to be an 8-issue series, and then they, for whatever reason, changed it to 9 issues, which was cool with me. So I did all 9 issues. And it reminded me of a comic that when I was really little, I used to like, called Batman Family. And it was
and I had
what it is.
Sign my number 1 Batman Family.
Nice. Yeah, it was awesome because you never knew from month to month what you were going to get. It was a bit unpredictable. There were stories where it might feature Robin or Batgirl or the Penguin. There were both bad guys and good guy types in there. So for me, that was one of my fondest early Batman memories. And Gotham Underground reminded me of that because it really focused on the villains. And Batman, if I'm remembering correctly, doesn't show up in costume until the last page of issue 7. So the rest of it's like Matches Malone, Bruce Wayne, and all the villains.
Thanks.
That's
now,
amazing.
Jack, your first DC credit that I could find was Batgirl. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was the second project that I actually worked on, but it came out before Green Arrow because it was a rush job. Like the penciler was late and the inker couldn't get it all done, so they brought me in to help out.
Okay, I was going to ask.
It was Batgirl 61.
I was going to say, how did that?
Yeah. It was funny because I had just finished Green Arrow, the first issue, and I know that having talked to a lot of creators and editors, that a lot of them would say a lot of a lot of artists and writers make the mistake of thinking like once you're in, you're in. Like that first job, once you got that, coast is clear. No way. Like it's really, really hard to get every gig, and you always have to have hopefully enough rotating doors where different editors like you or might want to use you. And so, yeah, I was expecting to really have to hustle. And just as I was finishing Green Arrow, I think it was Michael Wright, or maybe it was Shrek. I can't remember. But anyway, one of them called me and were like, hey, could you do whatever it was, 6 or 10 pages of Batgirl? And I was like, right on. And I was on it. So it just ended up being like, I was very fortunate. It was one gig after the next. So yeah, Batgirl came out first. And I think the next month Green Arrow came out. And then the next month it was Detective Comics, which was like a huge thing in my head to check off that box because, I grew up reading Detective Comics as a little kid, which is how I really learned how to read, was comic books. I kind of owe comic books a lot, although my high school teachers might not think that. But at the time, Detective Comics, I was like, oh my God, I got to find out, like, what are these guys saying and doing? So to get to work on that was very cool. And I, again, was fortunate to kind of get thrown into the deep end early.
Hey, comics are, I learned to read, so too bad to anybody. I tell everyone all the time, and I was like, and I dare any teacher to try and steal the credit. All they helped me do was be like, yes, I know the vocabulary words of the comic book I'm reading now. Urgh.
Yeah, right.
I used to get so upset because like vocabulary day was Friday and I so very rarely got 100 on vocabulary day. And anytime I was one of the people who got 100, the stupid little reward, instead of a Hershey Kiss, I always landed on sticker day. And I was like, I never land on Hershey Kiss day. Never. And
that's a tragic story.
Years of that, by the way. It's insane that I'm thinking about this right now.
So funny right now.
So, now I hate this question for me. Do you think digital production has changed what it means to be an inker today? Do you think it's had a big or shifting effect? And what's that like?
Okay, so I have a lot of shortcomings, but one of them isn't a lack of things to say. So you could tell me if I'm going off the but I would say digital inking has come a long way. And I think the main shift that's occurred because of it isn't the quality of the work as much as how it's impacted inkers having work. So what's ended up happening is a lot of pencilers have been given license to ink their own work. And there's a lot of great pencilers, and I've been so fortunate to work with so many of them. But a lot of them aren't great inkers. They just aren't. And that's a fact. So, and you could tell, like, I think if, people like yourselves who are sophisticated viewers can tell, like, if you look at artist A inking his own work and then an inker like, could be me or Dexter Vines or Mark Morales or any of the guys who I think do really nice polished work, you see a huge difference. And not only in the quality of the line, but the depth, the separation that happens in a page. But now a lot of pencilers are inking their own work. And honestly, like, it shows that the quality really detracts from their work because their excellence often lies in the pencil work and not in the nuance of line. And I feel like that's something that's really suffered in comics over the last decade. And something that I was really finding was a bummer towards the end of my run with DC, which was like 12 years. So I saw a lot of that happening where like the guys were inking themselves and I'm like, oh, like really? Like, and it was no disrespect. I mean, like, they're incredibly skillful, but there's just not everybody can do both pencils and inks at the same level. And I do think you see a lot of that. Like even like guys like Ed McGuinness, if you look at his work, and he's had some of the best inkers in the world, like Dexter Vines is one of them who I just mentioned. If you look at Ed's work with Dexter inking him, and then you look at when it's not inked by Dexter. There's a difference. And I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, it's amazing. Ed McGuinness is Ed McGuinness. It's going to be wonderful no matter what you do. But there is an impact there. I think that's probably the most significant change. But like I ink on my stuff.
I would back your argument. And part of backing your argument, that's a Dexter Vines piece right here.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great. That's awesome.
I mean, no shade, but my favorite duo for a long time were the two of them. And when I see Ed's art on its own, it's I enjoy it, but it's not the same as that period. That period was
so good. So good. And again, Ed's had other good inkers too. Like I'm not, wanting to sound like I'm speaking negatively of any of them. I think there's all kinds of great combinations, but those two are magic, and I love everything they did. But like I digitally ink now, like Sight, I digitally ink. I did an alternate cover, had Chris Campana pencil it, and he and I have worked before where I inked him traditionally, and inking it digitally for me at this point, it's really just another medium. Like it's not really the medium in question so much as who's using it, So I think if you give somebody who's not a great inker digital inks, like, I don't know, it's not going to make them great. Like maybe there's some shortcuts in digital that will help them, but I like to be able to do both, So if somebody asks me to ink it traditionally, I can do that, or I can ink it digitally. So I feel like that's come a long way, especially since when it first happened. They were calling digital inking taking pencil art and darkening it, and that was inking. Like that's not inking at all. Like that is the antithesis of what inking is. Like darkening, I remember Rob Liefeld's studio did it for a while, and he's a guy, again, Liefeld, like people can bag on him all they want, but he really understands the energy of comics and how to make them work. Whether or not you like the way he draws feet or heads is a totally different story, but he's another guy. Like when you had John Sabal inking him, it was magic. There was something really, really different about his work when you see guys like Sabal inking Liefeld. And that was like back in the time where he was doing that Marvel Reborn, I think, and Awesome Entertainment. But that's just another good example of somebody like Liefeld. It just really needs a good inker. And it isn't to say whether he's good or bad. You can think what you want to think about him. But it's objective when you look at how he inks himself with a Micron pen versus somebody like, say, Mark Morales, who would, just shine it up.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now since we're talking about the craft, you've inked dozens and dozens of pencilers. What's your approach to honoring their line while still putting your own feel on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I just try to look for places where I can enhance their work, and like where I could fit in to make it stronger than it already is. And like, I don't know if I want to name specific pencilers because some of them get, agitated, but it's different for every guy, because there might be an artist where I'm going to use a lot more brush than I'm going to use Croquill pen. So it would really depend. Like, I don't know if you guys know Yvel Goucher's work, but I think he's a really underrated artist. And I got to ink him on what was supposed to be a 2-issue backup story for a character called Gentleman Ghost. And it was awesome. And when I looked at his work, I loved his work, and I was thrilled to work with him because he's like one of those guys. So I was like, what would my inks look like on him? And then I already knew what I wanted it to look like. So it was easy because in my head, I knew what I could do to punch up his work. And luckily he agreed. And that was a fantastic partnership because he trusted me to do whatever. He knew I wasn't going to go in there and frivolously change things or alter things. But he knew it wasn't an ego issue. It was simply, how can I serve the work? So I always try to think about it that way. Like when I'm penciling something, I have to serve the script. I mean, that's the bottom line, no matter what I think. If I'm trying to shoehorn Hello Kitty in the corner, I could do that as long as it doesn't interfere with the storyline. But in general, I'm not going to be taking too many liberties. So I'm always careful about that. When I make changes, it's because it needs it. And I have had a few pencilers disagree. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Like, ultimately, the editors are the guys who we're working for. And if they agree, then that's how it's staying. And it's not, again, it's not an ego thing. It's just, well, the facial expression you drew doesn't look like what the script says. So I made it look like that. And I did it as gracefully as humanly possible. But it really depends. Like, there's a lot. Like, I got to ink Rich Buckler. It was towards the end of his career. And, it was just very loose. And I think I was credited as the finisher as opposed to just the inker. But his work really required me to redraw a lot of his pencil work and then go in and just try to polish it up as much as I could. But I didn't want to go crazy, adding tons of cross-hatching and doing things that didn't make sense for a Rich Buckler page. So I had to just find some middle ground. And of course, I've been reading his work since I was a kid. So a lot of it, I'm so nerdy about it. Like, I fantasized about, like, what would my inks look like on this guy and that guy? And luckily, like, it's just been fortunate. Like, I've been able to do it with a lot of them. Like, Mark Bagley was another guy who I always thought, like, I could do something with his work to make it look, I don't want to say better, but like, in my eyes, better and different than the way a lot of people handle it. And I love the people who have inked his work too. So it's again, no disrespect to them. But I got to ink him on issue 690 of Batman. And I was really happy with that. Yeah, and that was super cool. They split the book between me and Rob Hunter because even though Bagley's super quick, there was some kind of a deadline issue.
Judd Winnick's right. Sorry, I'm very excited. I'm like, I remember.
Yeah, it was awesome. And so, for me, it's like a lot of the times I don't have to think too much because I feel like I got all the nerves out of my work in the indies. I made a lot of mistakes and learned. And like a lot of people have asked, like, oh, did you get nervous when you had to ink Fernando Passarin or, Mark Bagley or whoever? And I never do. Like, I'm always honored. I'm always like, oh my God, I just want to do the best work I can do. But I never really feel nervous about it because I think about it a lot before I lay down the first line. Like, I have an idea in my head, and sometimes that changes. Sometimes you have to go to a plan B. But I think because, like, I've thought about it for so long, and it took me a long time to break in, that I had a lot of time to perseverate over it. So it kind of served me in the end, I guess.
And Jack, when you talk about those other collaborators, if you had to pick a top 3 of your favorite guys to work with, could you do that?
Do you want me to focus on a penciler specifically?
Oh, just your favorite collaborator in general. Doesn't have to be.
Geez, I gotta say, like, I know that this isn't the answer a lot of people would give, but Mike Martz and Bob Schreck were 2 of my all-time favorite collaborators. I just found it to be so easy to talk to them and joke and have, like, we just had a really good rapport. And if they told me, like, here's what we need you to do, they knew that I understood how to do it. Like, there was trust. Like, he just knew if, like, there was a book that I worked on with Mike Martz. It was JSA Classified. And there were 2 pencilers. I did 3 issues, 2 different pencilers. And he really told me exactly what he wanted me to do. And then didn't ask any questions. He's like, this is what I want. And I know you'll do it. And I guess he was happy with it because nobody, yelled at me or asked me to redo anything. So I'd say like Mike Martz and Bob Schreck were definitely like 2 of my top collaborators. I just found it to be like such a no bullshit way of doing things. It was never any, nonsense answers or blowing smoke. It was always just straight shooting. And I really appreciated that because it saves time. Nobody's worried about anybody's ego. It was just, here's what we need. I need it by this day. Can you do it? Yes, do. Done. But let's see. I'm just trying to think of, like, if I could name a favorite penciler collaborator. Oh man, there's so many. I'm not even going to name a pencil. There's so many good ones. But like right now at SHP Comics, Sean Hainsworth, who's the publisher and he's also the writer of Say, has been an awesome collaborator because we actually live close enough to each other to get together, which is the best. Like when you can actually have like a face-to-face conversation and maybe have a beer or whatever. It's really a great way for me to collaborate anyway, because like I could sketch something right in front of him and be like, hey, is this what you're thinking? And he could either pour the beer on it or say, yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and then I can respond right away. And again,
Well,
he's
how
somebody.
do you respond when he pours the beer on it?
He didn't, which was great. I was so grateful that he didn't. He seemed to be happy with most of what I did. But I think we have. I think he has a good sense of humor, which for me is key. Like the same holds true for the other guys that I mentioned. Like I can't do like guys who have. I've mentioned ego a few times. I just had guys say to me like, "Well, just so you know, I just want you to trace my pencils." And I'm like, "Well, you might want that. That's not what's happening here." So if you have a problem with that, I think you should go talk to the editor. But I'm going to tell you that I'm going to treat your work respectfully. You can look at everything else I've done, and we can communicate and figure it out. And it's worked out really well generally. But yeah, I think that's my best answer. There's so many good pencilers. It's hard for me to like name one, and then I'm like, oh shit. 5 minutes later, I'm like, so many. Like, is this guy gonna feel bad I didn't mention him? Because we did so much fun stuff. But I've just been super fortunate to get to work with so many guys who are really great. Alex Sanchez is one of them. I got to work with him on his first gig with DC. And it's just nice when like he knew who I was, and he's like, cool, man. Like, I like your stuff. You could do whatever you want. I'm like, right on. And he knew I wasn't going to like be stomping all over his work. Like, he knew it was going to be polished. And if I had a question, I would just ask him. And we had a really great rapport. He lived in New York. So, occasionally we could see each other because I was back and forth all the time, seeing editors and everything. And there's so many guys like I'd still love to work with that I haven't. Guys like Brad Walker, who I came up with. We know each other well, but just never got put on the same gig. I mean, his stuff is awesome. Like, just love his work. And I had done some sample work for DC over his pencils because they were looking for me to do something. It was an issue of it was like some Batman gang wars or something like that. And Brad was doing a few issues, and I guess my name was in the mix to do one of those. That didn't work out. But anyway, there's so many guys I'd still love to find a way to collaborate with.
Well, I hope you get to work with Brad again. I loved his work. I loved his Heroes for Hire work, and I loved his work on Secret Six with Gail Simone.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite series of all time. And people now, because like they were like not in comics then, that was like their window where they were out of it or whatever. And I was like, unlike the rest of you, I was there, and it was magical.
No, Brad is amazing.
Yeah, I love him. He is one of my favorite people, and he shares a birthday with one of my other favorite people, which is Phil Jimenez. And I'm like, I love both of them, and they have the same freaking birthday.
Is his birthday in April?
I think so. Great. Now I can't even remember. I only remember that they share a birthday, and I'm super psyched every time.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't want to say the wrong day. I think I know Brad's birthday, but he's just a super cool guy. We actually ended up working on the same comic, but it was split. I think if I remember correctly, Brad penciled half an issue of Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel, and I inked half, but the half he didn't work on. I worked with Carlos Magno.
Wow.
And I don't remember what issue, maybe number 9. I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy number 9, because Brad had a little bit of a run on it. He did several issues of Guardians of the Galaxy. So we were on the same book, but we weren't actually working with each other.
Their birthday is in July.
All right. I got them mixed up. I'm glad I didn't say the wrong date.
It happens. Now, Jack, you've worked on some major event books like Countdown and Final Crisis Aftermath. How different is the workflow when you're part of a big crossover series?
It's really different. It's funny, though. Comics are such an interesting world. I remember working on Countdown, and at the time I got approached, and Dan DiDio was saying that basically wanted to hire 4 groups of artists. So, a writer, penciler, inker, colorist, to have 4 teams, and they would rotate. So basically it was like working on a monthly book. So the idea is you're rotating through once a month, even though it's a weekly book, and you would do it for a full year. So that was the agreement. But in comics, things just never work out that way. So I ended up having issue 47, and I remember Dan and Mike Martz said that the incentive for artists was that the first person to finish the issue you're working on is the first in line for the next available one. So basically, if you hit your deadlines, you were more likely to get more work, if that makes sense, because there were 52 issues. So I had number 47. I was working with an artist who lived in Brazil, and I was given a date to expect the pages. They didn't show up the next week. They didn't show up. Following week, nothing. So I contacted Mike. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I'm never going to catch up because like we're already 2 weeks back. And so very quickly, I had an overnight FedEx package of pages that showed up the next day and got started. And it was really great. It was a really different kind of organic style that I hadn't really experienced yet at like the big two. And got it done. Everybody was happy. And it was the debut of when they took Mary Marvel and took her from a goody two shoes into a Batgirl. And I don't know if you guys remember, but she had like the black costume with a short skirt and the big glowing thunderbolt on her chest. And so it was funny. Like Mike called me a couple days after I had sent the last pages, and he's like, well, Dan said he doesn't really like the pencils, so he wants you to redo the issue. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding? I thought you wanted everybody to be on time, And so I don't know what the reason was, because the pencils were beautiful. Like, they were really nice. And I think the final work was very nice. But he ended up getting, I think it was Tom Derenick and somebody else, to redraw issue 47. And then I inked it, and then just trying to get through it and move on to the next one. So I inked issue 47 2 times. And I didn't realize it at the time, but people went crazy for this Mary Marvel Batgirl version. And people were contacting me like, hey, do you have the originals for sale, this and that? And I couldn't believe it. Like, I had never experienced.
Did you work on that
cover?
No,
sadly not. I love it.
Right.
No, Ed Bennis, I think.
Did Jurgens work on that cover? Or is this a Jim Lee? I'm trying so hard to see tiny stuff. Oh, no, it's Ed Bennis
is the
Rod,
artist.
It's Ed Bennis. It's Ed Bennis. All right.
And Rod Rice might have been the colorist.
And Rod was the colorist. But I was going to say, she had her dark Mary Marvel arc through this. And like, that cover was like the standout. Because I think the first cover she gets, it's her versus the female Eclipso, Jean Loring. And it's like, okay, that was cute.
Well, people went crazy over this. Like, I think if you look at the sales, I think number 47 was close to the same sales as the first issue, which was 52, right?
Well, I can assure you, in the secondary market, 47 is kicking everybody else's ass.
Yeah,
because of that particular cover. 47 and 36 rank higher than the others because of Dark Mary Marvel.
Right, it was a huge big deal, and I'll never forget being at New York Comic-Con. It was not long after that had come out, and a guy comes up to me before the show even starts. Like, I'm just setting up my banner. The guys say, "Hey, do you still have the splash page of Mary Marvel in her costume?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." He pulled out like the stack of cash, and he's like, "How much?" And I wasn't really even sure I wanted to sell it at that point, because I hadn't even gotten in the headspace of doing the show. And I threw out a number, and he's like, "Okay, you worked harder than I did for it." And he like handed me this cash. I was like, oh my God. And then I had 2 of them, and I had the published and the unpublished one. And then somebody else bought the other one that day at New York Comic-Con. It was nutty. But great. I mean, that was the good fortune of it for me. But I mean, that book sold so many that like the artist got royalties on it, which doesn't usually happen with like single issue comic books, unless you're talking about, like a lot of the Batman books do, I guess. But that was insane. I didn't expect that from Countdown. I just thought like, this is a cool steady gig for a year. Like I didn't really think it was going to sell like that. But it was crazy. It was awesome. And I got to work with Pete Pantazis.
No one remembers Countdown. No one really remembers Countdown, but they remember this. They remember this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, totally. Yeah, it's very funny. Like people still come up to me, and I still sign that book. Like nobody cared about number 36 that I worked on, or I think I worked on maybe 3 issues, but nobody cares about that. That Mary Marvel book was it was awesome. It was so much fun. It was just
I'm looking at the pages that are on eBay right now, and they're mostly from 47, the issue of 47, right? A couple of pages from 46. And then some stuff from 36, and there's one expensive page with Mary Marvel from 31. But the point is, all of them are dark and sexy Mary Marvel.
I remember they sent out a really funny email to all, and I don't think this is like talking baseball too much, but I remember the editorial sent out an email to all the artists being like, look guys, no upskirt shots of Mary Marvel. You can't be doing this. Like, no, don't do it. You cannot be looking upper skirt. And so I think some guys might have had to tweak some pages a little bit.
Well, right, because depending on the storyteller, Mary is either college age or she's a teenager, and that's
she's young.
That tiny sliding scale is immediately from inappropriate to inappropriate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
but anyway, it was a very funny thing. They're like to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, but if they want to associate her as a teenage Mary Marvel, it's like you can be sexy, but don't be too sexy because then we're going to run into problems.
Right.
All right. Rich, we are at that mark. If you got any more questions for our friend before I pull up the video.
Oh, the one last question I did want to ask was, since you did so much more of the big two, you did so much more DC than Marvel. Did you not enjoy your time at Marvel, or was it just the way the work came?
Oh, let's see. Scale of 1 to 10. How honest do I be about this? I usually am a 10 honest. So yeah, I didn't like working with Marvel for a number of reasons. I could really tell a lot of stories about it, but stuff you guys have probably heard. The contract is not great. Like I'll give you the quick for instance, and I think again you've probably heard this before. I'm sure I'm not the first guy to talk about it, but I signed the contract, so whatever. I can't complain too much. But Marvel doesn't pay you royalties on any of the trades you work on unless they're sold in the United States. So a lot of artists here would agree with me that a lot of their royalties with DC come from overseas sales, like in the UK, Germany. There's a lot of places where like people buy comics and they buy trades, and you don't get that money with Marvel. And it's so arbitrary. It's like, so you're screwing us over with such a low rate to begin with that you can't pay royalties on overseas sales. Like that was for me just such a like kick in the balls. I'm like, come on. Like I know you're used to shitting on artists, but like that to me was just really hard to tolerate, especially after working on Guardians of the Galaxy, and then they make it into a movie or a series of movies. And that book was sold like crazy, and they printed many different versions of it. So Marvel, in the end, without getting too detailed about it, like I asked Marvel not to call me anymore. So they had offered me a gig, and it was one of their big selling books, and I was psyched. It was like, I think it was a 6-issue run, and then I was like, all right, awesome, when do we start? And then they told me, they're like, oh, but we have to cut your rate by $20 a page. I was like, what? Like, no, I won't get into the whole dialogue. It didn't go too well. It wasn't my most professional moment, but I was like, look, man, there's a lot of young, desperate artists out there. Why don't you go find them, but don't call me again. And that was the end of Marvel.
Oof. Well,
kind of, although a different division.
You just laid it down.
How much disrespect do I need to take from anybody? Well, I mean, it's just like after a while, it's like, really? Like, like it's just shitty. It's a shitty way to treat somebody, and I don't tolerate that. I just don't feel like I don't feel like I gave them any reason to treat me that way. And all I did was turn in work on time. I busted ass with DC for a long time on top books, like, and you're gonna tell me you can't pay my rate? Like, you got to be kidding. But another division of Marvel actually contacted me, and I ended up doing some licensed work for like their trading cards. I don't remember. It wasn't Cryptozoic. The hell was the name of it? Upper Deck. They were doing like trading cards, and then they had the one of one, like the original art cards. So I did some of that, but that was okay. It was just a fun thing I hadn't done before. So
you and many others, sir, hung in there for a while. A lot of my artist buddies, Upper Deck was like helping to pay the bills, and like Upper Deck was paying them better than DC or Marvel, even returning a phone call or what they could offer, and I thought that was so funny. That like I was like, I can't believe that this was like a whole era. I remember I'm like, yeah, these original art cards, man. He's like, I got to do them. It's like, I can't, like, it's great work. And he's like, and they didn't, they weren't, you know what I mean? Like, they were not shafting anybody, which I thought was nice.
Well, without getting into that too much, I ended up
at the time that my friend was telling me about it.
Well, they actually, I caught them, and it could have been a lawsuit very easily, doing some pretty unsavory things, claiming that they had rejected some of my work, I asked, was like, well, why? Like, I followed all your rules, and if you didn't like the drawing, you could tell me, but I think they're all pretty good. And they're like, oh, no, we just can't get into the reasons. I was like, okay. And I went on eBay, and I went on eBay. There it is. Somebody had it. They had pulled it and they were selling it. And I screenshotted it and sent it to the guy I was talking to. I was like, so do you want to explain again, like, why I got rejected for this? Because, anonymous user number 77533 owns it. So how'd that happen? So yeah, once I realized they were screwing me over too, I was like, yeah, no thanks.
I'm so upset that every era there is always an issue with them. And of course, my era with them was, I loved the Versus System card game, and we still had original art on the DC cards as we were barreling towards the end of it. And then of course the whole Yu-Gi-Oh! Konami court case came, and they caught them so extraordinarily red-handed. And then I figured all those people had been eliminated from Upper Deck, right? Everyone who was guilty, out. And I was like, okay, it's a new era. Let's rebuild the trust, right? And again, I had that friend who was getting paid in a timely fashion. So I thought that was good. And now here you are to remind me I got to keep my eye on them constantly.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out well for a while, but things fell apart quickly. And yeah. And anyway, whatever. I mean, I did some DC Bombshell ones too, which were fun. And then that company, I think they're called Cryptozoic, went under. But that was fun.
They're
like,
not
it was
under,
fun.
though.
Oh, they're not?
They're not under, but they've switched to a very Kickstarter style model. And probably because
Gotcha.
finances were not good. So now whenever you see their product lineup, there'll be a big Kickstarter, and then there'll be some of that stuff at stores. Like, there'll be the retailer kits that come out of it. And then
that makes sense.
We rinse and repeat again.
Right.
Let's talk about Sight, a 5-issue science fiction thriller from SHP Comics and Massive Publishing, written by Darren Cape, illustrated by Jack Purcell himself. All right. The premise is Angelina. Hey, that's my niece's name. Angelina, an amateur boxer, has been cursed with the ability to see events before they happen. She has visions. She's had these visions since childhood. They are not presented as a fun superpower. Her ability has left her isolated and emotionally troubled. When her visions begin pointing toward an apocalyptic event, she has to figure out what they're telling her and whether she can actually change what she sees. And
yes, that is a fantastic read. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really fun book. And one thing I can say about it is like something that I've really strived to try to do anyway, like one of my goals after leaving, doing a lot of like the DC stuff, was I wanted to do stories that had a cool ending, because I always found it really frustrating when a great story is moving along until the end and there's like this disastrous ending that's very disappointing. So I did a creator-owned graphic novel called Malice and Mistletoe, and really liked that because there were a lot of similar things in Sight where there's almost like beats of the story that are set up to make you think that it's going in one direction, but it's not at all. Like it swerves off to a hard right somewhere else. And Sight, the ending, there's only 5 issues. Number 1's out now. Number 2 comes out the 3rd week of September. And they're all going to come out on time, which I always try to like counter my pet peeves with comics, which is crappy endings and late shipping. And so we are working way ahead. So I'm just finishing up the 5th issue, and that's coming out in December. And the ending, the 5th issue, there's such a cool payoff in number 5. I'm so psyched about it. Like I'm really enjoying it more than anything I've drawn in the entire 5 issues. It's super cool. So yeah, it's a thriller. There's no superheroes. I did manage to wedge in a few pro wrestlers, but it's a super fun story. It's told a little bit less traditionally than like the average comic, where I also felt like I'm not on Batman anymore and I've got to do something to try to compete with DC, Marvel, Image. So most of the story is told in a monochrome fashion with like traditional panels. And then there's these panels called Sight panels. Like this is an example. And the Sight panels are color coded. There's 3 different blues. And as you get through the first issue, you kind of get to figure out, hopefully, what that means. And there's even a little explanation that is in the back about reading Sight panels. And I think it's really fun and really different. So for me, this has been a blast to work on, and being able to know that it's going to come out on time. I'm not going to annoy any fans with late books. And there's an actual cool ending that people won't feel ripped off. Like that's big for me.
I love that. Well, you know what? Let's see the trailer. As soon as it decides to trail.
And we're back.
We're back-ish.
Nice.
There we go.
So
yeah.
Now, Jack, right away, what I noticed on the cover here, your Sight panels, if you will, because you showed us the ones before that were just black. Now these ones are black and white. What I immediately thought of was Kirby dots. Is this an homage to Kirby dots? Yeah,
the jacks stick together, a little Kirby Craggle. I mean, I thought about it. I guess I wanted to. I'm glad you said that. I didn't want it to be like a direct lift of it, but I like that it represents it. It kind of resembles it without being, you're feeling like you're going back to your 1970s Fantastic Four collection. But yeah, I think that I found something I felt like didn't have the same vibe, but it was the same basic idea. So there's a connection there, but I didn't want it to be too direct, if that makes sense, because the Kirby Craggle represents something different than what this does. But yeah, I really like this look. I had to do something to make the panels stand out and be dynamic so that they weren't confused with the main continuity.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a fun way. It's a nice addition and a different way of telling a story.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it works, and I think that like people like yourselves who are like seasoned comic book readers, I think are gonna have an easier time understanding it because I have tested it out and Sean has with, some non-comic book people just to see how they react. And they have a harder time, kind of because I think that comic book readers are so generous with their interpretations and what happens in the gutters between the panels that I think non-comic book people have a harder time with that. So that's why we put the explanation at the end of the first issue, just so hopefully gives everybody a little more clearer understanding of what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. It is so funny that you bring that up because there was a video I saw on my while doom scrolling this morning, and this woman really explained the uniqueness of comic books because from panel to panel, our brain is filling that in. Our brain is using our senses to fill in what's happening. And it's funny when you've been reading for so long and you loved it from the first time, in my case, right? And you loved this thing from the first time you picked it up. You picked up a comic and you've loved this medium. You just take that for granted, because I think for my generation, that sensation was born from you just bought your latest new favorite comic and you read it again and again and again, right? And the more you read it and the more you realize, oh, wait, this panel goes to here, to here, to here, then to here, to here, to here, to here, right? And then like things like that. And you're like, oh man, that's where the fireballs are coming from. Just weird stuff. But like you read it over and over till you knew it inside and out. And then you realize it was part 2 of 3. So you had to find part 1 and part 3 and get your story together. And sometimes that took a couple of months to happen. But I feel like that experience was, for me, that experience was birthed then. I need to have these comics. I had to read them 1,000 times over. And then everything started lining up. But yeah.
I mean, it's funny how like when you're a comic, sorry.
No,
it's funny how when you're a comic book fan, you really, there's such a unique culture and fandom to it, and like you guys probably look forward to every Wednesday like I do. I'm still as big a fan as anyone to pick up the new comics, and I've been doing a lot of signings and appearances to promote site, and I'm always reminded how people don't understand how to even get comic books, because I've done appearances outside of conventions and people are like, oh, so like I'll just go to any comic book store and it'll be there. I was like, no, I have to kind of try to explain to them, like, you actually have to tell comic book stores ahead of time. And they're like, well, if it sells out, like they can order more, right? I'm like, not really, like not in the indies, and I have to try to explain to them how comics work. But I've really tried to spread the gospel to a lot of potential readers to say, if you're into site, go to your comic book store and tell them to put it in your pull or reserve you copies. Otherwise, it may not be there. And that's been something that has been challenging, where a lot of people have contacted me and been like, oh, where can I find site number 1? They didn't have it at my store. And then, I can tell them, you go to hpcomics.com and order it there, but comic book stores might not have it unless you tell them you want it. So I think a lot of people now are hopefully going to let them know they want number 2 or 3 or whatever. Because, it's not so simple as people think it might be to even get a hold of comic books, if you can even find a comic book store.
Mm-hmm.
If you can even find a comic, we don't all live in, well, some people do live in a comic book wasteland. Some people do.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing if you can.
Well, I'm fortunate there's a lot all around me. But I really thought it was interesting. I tried to keep it fresh in my head. I read it soon after you gave it to me at Terrificon, and I just did a reread today. And Angelina is it feels like in the beginning, she's very kind of isolationist. But you're building the story because you're kind of at the same time showing that she is isolationist because she's reading people inadvertently and seeing the shitty parts of a lot of different people. And the alien part that we saw more in the trailer, you're more talking about she sees a premonition. I don't want to ruin too much more, but there's a buildup and it's a storyline, and it's just interesting how you're doing the flow of the story. Can you talk about how it takes? I mean, you can tell a story probably in 1 or 2 issues, but when you're putting it out in 5, there's got to be a flow to it. So can you kind of explain how that works, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, we were worried that people wouldn't want to get issue 2 because the aliens weren't in it yet. Like, they're discussed. You know that there's something going on. You see the spaceship, but that's why we kind of did a little bit of a preview of what's coming up with the following issues, so that if you had those readers who are like, hey, there's that cool alien on the alternate cover, but he's not in it, wanted to let them know, like, this stuff's coming. But in order to tell this story in a way that's not decompressed, but is just clear, it has to be paced in a way where we're going to get there. We're going to get to that stuff. But first you have to learn who the players in the story are, so that there's an impact to what happens in issues 2, 3, 4, and 5, because some of the main characters haven't been introduced yet. And I think in issue 2, you meet one character who is named after my favorite drink, which I won't spoil, but that's a character who appears in every issue following and who is a crucial part of the action. But yeah, it was really challenging to say, because Sean and I talked about it, like, maybe we need to do like a non-linear storytelling where there's a scene with an alien just killing somebody, just because then people are like, oh, cool, aliens, and, blah, blah, blah. But I think ultimately we felt like, again, trying to serve the story, what makes the most sense, tell this story optimally, and this made the most sense. So, I think there was a real temptation to say, like, oh, we gotta like get to some of the alien stuff right away to keep people's attention, but ultimately just decided, like, just to try to be as pure as we could about serving the story. I don't know if that might have been a long-winded answer.
That's a good answer. Where I think it's great to have thought about how you're approaching your audience.
Yeah, because the trade's going to be super cool. Like, when you pick up the trade, it's coming out in April 2027. Like, it's going to be great because you could read the whole thing at once. You could read it in chunks, whatever. But it'll make perfect sense. You'll be like, oh,
and I was gonna say, and I'm sure the appendix will be amazing.
Yeah, the 5th issue is so awesome. Like, I just can't tell you. Like, I just finished this double-page spread that I thought was like one of my favorite pages that I've drawn in the entire thing. So for me, like, again, the fan part of me is like, yeah, like, this is going to be exactly what I was hoping. It's going to be a cool payoff. Not going to be some lame ending that's just a cheap setup for, the sequel or whatever. Like, this is just a sweet ending. Like, if anybody comes up to me and is like, oh yeah, I saw that ending coming, I'm calling bullshit. You didn't see it coming. And it'll be worth your time because there's something cool coming that you wouldn't have expected. So I really like that. That's the kind of comics that I'm really into. A lot of the stuff that I'm reading, like stuff from Ignition Press, like Murder Podcast, stuff like that, has that quality where, you read it and then you're like, oh, wait, like, things just took a sharp left here and I didn't expect that. I really like that kind of stuff.
I love that. And I got to tell you, and this is a weird side thing. I saw, oh my God, what's it called? The End of Oak Street, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like, the twist ending is literally the final moment of the movie.
Oh, really?
and I mean, like, why are you showing this to us if this is not wildly intentional, right? And I really liked it. And all I'm thinking is, oh my God, poor Anne Hathaway, give this girl a break. This was a great movie they made, a fine movie they made. But you can't fight Spider-Man. Spider-Man's just crushing everybody else like they're the insect. But anyhow, it does have a great twist ending. Just shout out to End of Oak Street.
Right on. Good to know.
But I love stuff like that. So it's funny because you mentioned before we went live, you mentioned really being into wrestling. And is any of that fever inside of you as you are doing the artwork on this character who is a boxer?
It's so funny. A lot of people who know me were surprised when they read the first issue. They're like, "Wait a minute! Like, you didn't make it about wrestling? Like, it's boxing. Like, that's not the same thing." And I'm like, "I know, but boxing made sense. Like, wrestling, it wouldn't have made sense if she was a pro wrestler." So the idea of boxing and working out in a gym made sense for this character. Although I would have loved to somehow have shoehorned pro wrestling into it. There are a few characters who are modeled after pro wrestlers, and for eagle-eyed fans of the indies, there is a wrestler who appears in a double-page spread in issue 1. And in, I believe, let's see, it's issue 3, there's a gang of street toughs who also oddly resemble some indie pro wrestlers that, again, eagle-eyed wrestling fans might or might not recognize.
Okay. Man, Dr. Von Hoot, if you're watching this in the rewatch, pay attention.
But like not any guys who are like TV wrestlers, AEW or WWE. But I do have a potential project that it may not be like a big thing like Sight. It could just be like 8 pages, but I can't really get into it yet. But there is a wrestling related project that I'm just getting off the ground, and we'll see if it happens. It may or may not. But it does involve a TV wrestler, so that could be a fun collaboration. So something to look out for.
I like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And speaking of your love for wrestling, since we were both just at Terrificon, did you get to chat with Sergeant Slaughter?
Nah, I'm not really interested. But a funny story about him. His daughter went to UMass Amherst, which is like half hour away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And my best friend's father loved Sergeant Slaughter. Like, he was an old time wrestling fan and, would go see him. He's one of those guys yelling, "Break it off," and in the audience. And he met Sergeant Slaughter, who was out for breakfast at a diner down the road from UMass. Mm-hmm. So that was the funny Sergeant Slaughter story. He was super nice and gracious. So big respect for Sergeant Slaughter, just taking time out talking to my best friend's dad. But no, I'm not really interested in meeting a lot of the wrestlers at the show.
WWE guys?
Nah, I don't care.
I gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I love what they did. I'm just not.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, getting back to Sight, how did this project come to be?
So the only time in my life that LinkedIn.com has ever served me ever was with this. And I don't know, I was posting some random artwork and I got a message from Sean Hainsworth, and he's like, "Hey, I'm in Hatfield, Mass," which is like 20 minutes away from me. He's like, "And I got this company, SHP Comics," and he sent me a link and told me a little bit about it. And he's like, "Do you want to get together for a beer?" And we did, and started talking about different ideas. And he said this one idea he had, which was Sight, and it sounded really exciting and cool. And it just kind of went from there. Like we just worked it out and got started. So it was very strange. So thank you, LinkedIn.com. The only time it's ever worked for me is meeting a creator who's 20 minutes away from my house and not, halfway across the world. But yeah, it's been an awesome collaboration because I did a 6-issue story in a comic called Aerotech. This is like one of the covers of it. I won't open the book because it may not be, safe for all audience members, but really fun. So just, discovering SHP Comics and some of the stuff those guys are doing, it's just been really, really fun. And I'm so grateful that we ended up meeting each other and getting to collaborate on this because it's been a real blast.
And was that something they financed, or was that a Kickstarter situation? How did that work?
I think that the trade might be a Kickstarter. Tales from Aerotech, the one that I mentioned, I had a 6-page in, was a Kickstarter. It almost acts as an annual for the main Aerotech series, so that was kickstarted. But Sight itself is not a Kickstarter. It's published by SHP Comics. The first issue's out, and like I said, the second one's coming out in, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, he publishes a number of different titles. So this is just one of them. There's one called Woodstake that's really cool. It's like Woodstock, but with zombies. And Woodstake 99, I think, is going to be a Kickstarter. So that's probably his next Kickstarter project. And I think that's coming up at the end of 2026. That should be really, really fun.
Okay, so besides comic readers going out and talking to their local comic shops and requesting Sight in those shops, how else can readers get their hands on it?
Yeah, I mean, shpcomics.com is probably the best way to do it because he has a store that's very easy to deal with. And then if you were to run into either of us, we do all kinds of different appearances. We're both going to be together at IC3, which is in Providence, Rhode Island this year. So if you're in, the New England area, that's going to be happening in September. I think might be the 26th. So we'll both be together there. You could get it signed by everybody. And then there's a couple other events that I'll be doing, and I think Sean's doing like a horror convention. So if you keep an eye on our social media, it's probably the easiest way to know if we're going to be in your area. Like I was just out in Northern California in June at Flying Colors, which is Joe Field's store. So we're all over the place, not just in the Northeast. We're all over. But shpcomics.com, and then my social media, Instagram and Facebook, Threads, is Jack Purcell Inc. INK, Jack Purcell Inc. And I'm always posting about what I'm working on and what's coming up, appearances. So it's probably the easiest way.
Nice.
Excellent. So I'm going to try and be as fleshed out in this question. What this time next year, when all five issues should be out, right? So what will success look like for you? That Sight has found an audience, that it's found itself in comic book shops, or something a little bigger, a little more media breaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say in comics. You just never know, especially these days because HBO has DC Comics and Disney has Marvel. There's like not a lot of other places to pull from other than the indies for media like TV and film. But I think that Sight would be awesome for that. If that were to happen, that would be pretty sweet.
Amazon, but
yeah, right. I mean, Amazon.
It may not be your number one choice, but I say hold out until they offer a paycheck.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a tricky deal. So I don't know. That could be an interesting thing. I feel like with the way the comic book market is now, I feel like Sight 1 through 5, the best that I hope for it right now isn't even about like how much it sells, because I really can't control that. But what I think we can control is trying to get it out there as much as we can. Hopefully people like it. And if they do, that word of mouth is the best possible advertising anyway. And then when the trade comes out in April, hopefully a whole new bunch of people discover it and enjoy it. And, I would love, especially, again, I won't spoil anything, but I would love to pursue another Sight project after this, because the ending just leaves it in a place that is, it could be an embarrassment of riches in terms of where things could go. So that would be fun. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I just kind of hope that the single issues build an audience, and then the trade gets a bigger audience. And I think that's kind of how the comic market works most of the time. I think especially with the stuff you see at Image, a lot of the times those individual first few issues kind of don't reach a big audience, but ultimately the word of mouth, the collected edition, it's kind of where things start to snowball.
I like it.
And I'll be looking out for Amazon to contact us.
Amazon MGM.
Okay.
I'm putting it into the universe.
There are things happen.
I love it.
Stephanie Phillips is getting Grimm worked on right now, and Tim Seeley. I think Revival didn't do so well at Sci-Fi because nobody has Sci-Fi, but that has just jumped to Netflix coming next month. So it's a possibility, Jack. It could happen.
It could totally happen. I mean, like even with Malice and Mistletoe, my creator own that I did like 10 years ago.
I remember that.
We ended up having a really weird licensing conversation with a bourbon company. I guess I shouldn't mention the name of, but one of the story threads was that there's this whiskey. And so we were thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have like our own bourbon or whiskey? And we contacted this large company, and asked them, like, would you ever be interested in doing a collab where there'd be this cool red whiskey and there's this graphic novel, blah, blah, blah. So they asked for a PDF and they got back to us like really quickly. And they were like, well, we're not really sure this suits our audience because, this seems kind of adult. And I was just like, wait a minute, aren't you selling alcohol?
Your whiskey.
Like, isn't your entire audience theoretically adult? Like, what are you talking about? It was the weirdest thing. And of course, they didn't go for it. But we did end up working with a smaller distillery in Springfield, Massachusetts. And the guys were like mad scientists. So like every Christmas for 3 years, we had our own brand of whiskey. It was so cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. So you just never know. Like you said, I mean, anything could happen. You just got to like really work hard and hustle. And just, I think you're always in the right place at the right time if you're always working hard. So, we'll see what happens. I think both Sean and I are doing the best we can with it. And who knows? I mean, sky's the limit. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, Jack, since I know, your day gig is coming to an end in the next 4 to 5 years, you'll be retiring from the day gig of being a teacher, which we talked about earlier. Where do you see your creative flow going when you finish that chapter of your life?
It's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I try not to plan things too far in advance because I feel like it can be kind of a curse. But I mean, I'd love to think that there'll still be a market for comics. There are a lot of interesting things happening with copyrights expiring over the next 5 years. So a lot of characters that we're all very familiar with are going to soon become public domain. There's so many possibilities. I don't know. I'm just going to try to see. I'll tell you this. Here's what I do see. I do plan on working for AEW and or WWE in some way. That's going to happen. I don't know exactly how, where, when, but there's already steps being made and like they know who I am. So hopefully that'll happen. That's a big box to check off. Because my main two were to work on Batman and work with Stan Lee. And I did both those things. So now like I've just got to find new mountains to climb. That's kind of how I look at it. And so I'm not sure, but pro wrestling will in fact make an appearance in one of my upcoming projects.
Mm-hmm. And we've
coming soon. AEW versus DC, Part 3.
Oh no! I can't do that.
Can you really not do it? Like, or can you only not do it if the worst people are involved?
You know what I think doesn't work in comics is pro wrestling comics that are about pro wrestling. Like, I don't want to do things like, I mean, there's exceptions like do a power bomb, which is incredible. Yes. But I just like the idea of incorporating the concepts of pro wrestling. Oh my God, so good. It's so good. Just incorporating the concepts and the characters into a comic book, but not to make it like, hey, here's this pro wrestling company and I got my own characters and they're going to wrestle. Want to read about it? Like, nobody wants to read that.
What if you have a serious storyline? What if we have the AEW characters, right? And they're super powered for some grand event with the DC characters, and they all have something to fight for.
I would never say never. I would never say never.
Because what if it's everyone on Earth gets a chance to fight to save their world, not just the superheroes. Everyone who has heart. So we don't even have to use all the AEW characters, just the ones who really feel they have something to fight for to save the planet. And therefore, if you're in it to save the planet, you're stripped of your other abilities, but you're given something kind of a super ability, right? So even Superman, Wonder Woman, they can't access their heat vision, super breath, and lasso of truth. They have to rely on whatever it is that has been given to them. And I feel like that could work. I don't know what kind of weird mumbo jumbo villain.
It could be like a what if of wrestling.
Yeah, there you go.
AEW versus DC is already a what if of wrestling, so it doesn't matter, right? I just feel like, what if we give the story some serious heart and not just, hey, we're fighting because we're fighting for fighting's sake? What if all of you have been stripped? only those of you who have been deemed worthy can fight. And you're all selected by whatever unique, powerful, humane characteristic you possess. And obviously people like Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman would be chosen anyway. But what if of the AEW wrestlers, only certain ones are chosen, you know? And they're like, I don't even know why. Like, I know why I want to fight, but I'm like, but what is it special in me that I was chosen to be put here? You know? I think that could tell a good story. It would make some of the wrestlers jealous if they're not the A story characters, right? I get that. But I think if you find some heart in those characters on television and their storylines and apply that to the situation, it will work. But you know what? I'm just giving you free plot details. I'm into the universe for you.
I'm writing it all down.
This is Amazon MGM.
I do appreciate all the good vibes. I could use them, so I appreciate that.
Now, Jack, I think the viewers would kill us if I didn't make sure that we touched on your Stan Lee story. And if I'm not incorrect, was that at POW Entertainment?
I guess technically, yeah, like anything he did on his own was POW Entertainment. It was a really weird project because it didn't get distributed in comic book stores. It was called the Guardian Project. And it was so weird how it came out. Like the shortest version I could give you is that, which might explain some things, is that my birthday is on April Fool's Day. And at the time I had an agent who contacted me. And of course, I just thought it was ball breaking. And he's like, "Hey, you want to work with Stan Lee?" Because he knew that I did, you know, obviously. Like, and but I just thought, like, why me? Why would I get to do that? And I guess somehow I ended up on a short list of people he wanted to work with, and it ended up happening. And I remember at New York Comic Con, there was this giant room, and it was Stan and like the NHL people were there. And the idea was that Stan was going to write a 5-page story for each of the 30 teams. Originally, they were going to be like 5-page, like little floppy comics that they would sell. But then they decided to put it all in one collected edition. And Neil Adams actually did a cover for each of them. And then there's a 5-page story by different creative teams that I did some pencils and inks for. And I remember talking to the guy who was sort of the head of the deal, like the editor. And I was like, so, you know, when are these coming out through Diamond? And he's like, what? What's Diamond? I was like, oh no, like he doesn't know anything. And so I was like, well, Diamond at the time was the distributor, and that's how you get these into stores, right? Because how else are people going to buy them? He's like, oh, we're not going to do that. We're just going to sell them at hockey games. I'm like, dude, like, hold on. Like, I'm not a marketing genius, and I'm not claiming that, but I don't think NHL fans are going to cough up $50 for a graphic novel at a hockey game. I don't think that's going to happen. And sure enough, it didn't. And they never distributed it in comic book stores. So it's like a real collector's item. It's really hard to find.
The Hurricane, the King, the Wild, the Thrasher, the Islander, the Maple Leaf, the
It's
Penguin,
wild.
The Flyer. God,
it's really funny. I've actually got my copy right here. Good question, but like Stan signed one for me, and very cool. It's so cool, man. Like this is like, you know, for me, the holy grail of my geekiness is like getting to have worked on this project, and you know, a lot of other people who I came up with and I've been friendly with and collaborated with, and you know, guys like Mark McKenna and Mike Lilly, just a lot of people who I respect, and Neil Adams doing artwork in it was just mind blowing. So that was really fun. Like that was a huge box to check off. And I got to create a villain for one of the stories, which was crazy. So it was awesome. It was really fun. I just wish more people got to see it because nobody brings this for me to sign. I have never done a signing in my decades of doing this where anybody has this.
I'm looking now at how this took off at the 2011 NHL All-Star Game, and NBC Universal had a multi-million-dollar deal with GME, which did not come to fruition because it never gained momentum through all of 2011, despite the fact that they introduced these characters to be part of like the board, right? To be like, oh, you could vote, and you could vote on Facebook, and you could vote here and there. And no one cared from what I'm seeing in the summary.
Nobody cared. Nobody who would care had a chance to care because it wasn't in their hands. They couldn't get it at a comic book store. So it was just the weirdest strategy. Like, I just couldn't believe that somebody didn't talk sense into them or like, you can't do this. But that's what they did.
It does happen. Boy,
yeah, maybe if they didn't put it into that big compendium, then it wasn't $50. If it was like $3 or $4 for an issue, maybe the kids would have bought it at the, at the stadiums.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was originally what they were going to do, and I don't know what changed their minds. I mean, maybe the printing costs were too much. I don't know. They just didn't do their homework. They had no idea how the comic book industry worked. They just thought it was printing money because Stan Lee's name was on it. And it just, It wasn't. But people are selling them for crazy money on eBay, for sure. I mean, if you look it up on eBay, you'll see.
Yeah, because they hunted them down and be like, ha ha, we got them.
I actually found a guy who I bought one from, and I didn't even know this, but at one point they had this crazy idea that they made hockey pucks with the Guardian Project artwork on it. And I actually have one. I didn't even know it existed until like 2 months ago.
That's funny.
That's really limited. I mean, I worked on it and nobody ever told me anything about that. So yeah, a fun project. So glad I got to do it, but I just wish, people actually could have seen it.
They made wall art. They made your edition that you held up that's signed by Stan. And that's the NHL version. And then they made wall plaques. There's other covers of the Guardian Project.
There are?
Yes, but
wow, gee, I've never seen that.
Well,
is it all on eBay?
No. I'm sorry. That's the wall plaques. That's the wall plaques.
Okay, I was gonna say, wow.
So your cover, that's the official cover. Yeah. I don't see any other cover, but I do see the wall plaque. I do see the hang it at home banner. I don't see any of the hockey puck. This is really interesting.
It's really weird. It's super rare. I mean, honestly, this has been a long time. And I just learned about it a couple months ago, and I just got it in the mail last week. And I just had to have it because I'm like, how could I not have this? And Sean's going to be really jealous when he sees it because he's a huge hockey guy. And I haven't told him that I have this. I'm going to surprise him and show it to him tomorrow. So,
well, I'm going to try and get my hand on a normal version and not this $5,000 look. It was signed by Stan Lee version.
I think the $5,000 one's not even signed by him. I think I saw that. I don't think he even signed that. That's unsigned.
No, it's not signed. It's not. Holy cow. Yeah, all right, well, let me go grab that cheap one when I have the chance.
Yeah, you could probably find them for like $100. It's probably the cheapest, I think, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever. They're fun. It's not anything that it's going to blow your mind. It's nothing innovative. It's just fun.
But like you said, it's fun, and collectors like to have a rare thing that very few people have.
And this is it. Like, for real, this is it. Like, this is really hard to find because I always have people bringing like odd stuff that, like, I worked on a Marvel thing called Death's Head. Like, nobody knows who Death's Head is.
I know damn well who Death's Head is. What are you talking about? Marvel UK, Death's Head?
Yeah, okay.
They even brought him back for World War Hulk, and everybody who was my age was like, "Oh, what is he doing here? Oh my goodness!"
Oh, that's funny. I worked on an issue of Amazing Fantasy that I don't know if you remember. They relaunched it at one point.
Yes, with Aranya, of course. I was there. I lived it. I was there for this.
Nice. I worked on one of those issues of Death's Head.
Fantastic, and I was there to buy them. Like a real comic book fan who could afford it back then when it wasn't $4.99, $5.99, and $6.99 a book.
Yeah, right. You and the other 8,000 people who own that comic should hopefully enjoy it.
We did. And I especially enjoyed Aranya. I was really into it. I always feel like they once her fad was over, I felt like they did her dirty. Oh, look, she's another Spider-Girl. Okay, yeah, but like what else can we do?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, for sure. Again, Amazing Fantasy, nothing groundbreaking happened. I think it only went to like 16 issues too. Wasn't?
Yeah, it was short.
Yeah, it wasn't around very long, but whatever. They gave it a shot. They didn't come up with the next Spider-Man.
I mean, they came up with the next Spider-Girl.
Yeah, that's true. Close.
Kind of. They were. Listen, she was there. She had the story with her dad. She had her own villains. And like these are, and as much as we can go back and forth, these are like really important things. These are things that they still struggle with Miles, right? Because Miles has some of his own villains now, but a bulk of 616 Miles stories, he always ends up fighting Spider-Man villains, you know? And it's not always interesting. It was interesting when it was Hobgoblin. That was like cool. There was a story. There was meat, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. No, I'm with you. I love that. And if it's just gratuitous, it's hard for me to get into.
Yeah, but his new issue #1, bam, immediately new villain. So I was like, yes. I was like, stick that landing, new creative team.
We'll see. Hopefully they get past 8 issues. It seems like they have
42.
a hard time doing that.
The cutoff for
42.
Miles is always 42.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's a good number. I like that.
Yeah.
So, Jack, if there was one thing you wanted people to know about Sight, a final thing to sort of sign off for the all the fans or the possible up-and-coming fans, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that I feel like, having been around for a long time and having pretty discriminating taste about comics, like this would be a comic you could take a chance on. It's only 5 issues. It's not going to be like a lot of crossovers and nonsense. And there's a payoff. So for me, like that's, if somebody sold it to me that way, I'd say I'm on board. And so I just try to think about it like I'm doing it for me, and knowing that a lot of friends of mine who are fans feel the same way. So, I mean, I just, in a way, try to make comics for me and think that a lot of other people would like it if I like it. Because like I love the Absolute comics, which are, you know, it's not an unpopular opinion. They're great. So there's things about that comic that I like, and I feel like a lot of the people I connect with around that have similar reasons they like it. So I feel like that's what I would tell people. Like, it's a 5-issue series. Definitely worth taking a chance on. It's different. You're not going to see the ending coming, which is like one of the biggest complaints I hear from fans when I do appearances. So I would say, like, give it a shot. Like 5 issues, you can't miss. It's going to be fun. I think the artwork's engaging. I really like the story, and it's something different. It really is. I feel like when you read this, you're not going to say like, oh yeah, that's like black, white, and red, whatever those things are Marvel does. It's not like that. You're not going to liken it to something else, in my opinion. So something different, something fresh. So if you're tired of the same old stuff, I would pick up Sight.
Nice. And I'm here on the SHP site right now. You just go right to the store, just scroll down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're the 6th one down. Sight issue #1 Visions. Boom. You click that. $6.99. Oh, $5.99. $5.99. It's already got 5 stars.
Oh, good.
Beautiful. Got a nice little synopsis, a little bit of art. There you go. Go out and get it, everybody. Sight.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on. Let me talk about it.
I appreciate you being here. You know, I don't know why all my viewers are asleep tonight or where they are at, but I appreciate you being here, and I count on y'all rewatching this. I count on the rewind, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I've known you for over a decade now, so you know, you knew me when all I was doing was cackling with the Joker makeup on. And the last 3 years, I've really tried to step up this creator thing, and I've joined my buddy Cliff on comics. Yeah, I didn't disown him.
No, Jack didn't disown you when he knew you as a cackling Joker.
True indeed.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I always admired the strength of your voice. It never gave out. I always knew where you were. I can't do that. Like, my voice gives out by the end of a 2-day show, and you just sounded fresh the whole time, beginning to end. So I always appreciated the strength.
Yes. Well, some artists wanted to kill me because of it, right, Cliff?
We'll talk about that when the live stream is over.
Well,
I'm sure Jack will be particularly interested to hear who that might be.
There are some grumpy artists out there.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
When they just when they're just not having a good day.
Yeah, we're all there. I'm sure we've all been there. So yeah, I hear you. But I'm glad nobody ended up, coming after you.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone, check out Jack's new book, Sight. We've talked a lot about his stuff. He's a great guy. Cliff's told you about it. I've told you about it. Jack's told you about it. Now you got to do it. Go on to SHP. Go out and talk to your local comic shops. Ask for site, Cape and Purcell, SHP Publishing Comics. And you can follow Jack Purcell online, Instagram, Facebook. It's Jack, Purcell, Purcell.
That's right. Yes. Proper spelling counts on the internet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially when you're a teacher. I'm not going to mess that up.
Yeah, I know. I'm so weird about that. I'm always correcting people's spelling. Thank you for spelling my name right.
Absolutely. So, Cliff, you want to sign us off?
All right. All right. So thank you, Jack. You're amazing. Rich, thank you for making all this happen. Everyone, please make sure you like, comment, thank you, subscribe to Cliff on Comics and to Velvet J and Nerd Culture News. And of course, please go over to S&P. Go pick up site number 1. And until next time, as always, read your comics, and I love you. Good night.